A century or two ago, during the colonial era, as the business of slave trade gradually wound down, some groups of people from Nigeria were captured and later resettled in Sierra Leone by the British West Africa Squadron. Many of them eventually returned to the present-day Nigeria and settled in a part of Lagos Island. Thomas Babington Macaulay and Abigail Crowther were one of such people, and this couple will later give birth to the nationalist icon Herbert Macaulay. On the 14th day of November 1864, Olayinka Herbert Macaulay Badmus was born in Lagos. He was the seventh child. Lagos at the time of Herbert's birth was politically and socially divided against itself. The British colonialists lived in the posh Marina district. The Saros and other slave descendants lived to the west, and the Brazilians lived behind the whites in the Portuguese town. Behind all three lived the real Lagosians, the masses of native Yoruba people, disliked and generally ignored by their privileged neighbors. It was not until Macaulay's generation that the Saros and Brazilians even began to contemplate making common cause with the masses. Thomas Babington Macaulay was the founder of the first secondary school in Nigeria, the CMS School in Lagos. Herbert first attended his father's school, then went on to Fura Bay College in Freetown, Sierra Leone. As soon as he returned to Lagos in 1882, he started off working in the Department of Public Works. After a while, he left the Lagos colony for Plymouth, England, to study civil engineering for 3 years. Just like every anti-colonial chap in his time, Herbert Macaulay grew to detest colonial rule. For the most part of his life, he opposed them. Macaulay was one of the first Nigerian nationalists to criticize the claims made by the British that they were governing with the true interest of the natives at heart. He believed that the colonialists were only interested in enriching their pockets, fostered by the ignorance of the natives. When Macaulay returned to Lagos in 1893, he was appointed surveyor of Crown lands by the colonial government. He, however, resigned after 5 years due to what he considered racial discrimination against indigenous civil servants by the European elites. After his resignation, Herbert started his own private practice. I go Lagos, I go get money, I go change my life. Unfortunately for him, the business flopped and he went bankrupt. This financial distress became unbearable, and Herbert succumbed to the temptation of fraud. He defrauded a family, he got caught and was imprisoned for 2 years. 2 years later, and a free man, Herbert began a soul search for peace within. He desired most of all to become a better man, because unfortunately for him, his criminal conviction effectively barred him from ever running for public office under the colonial administration. Therefore, he knew he had to rely on his brilliance, intelligence, and versatility. He took on jobs first as an engineer, then an architect, and a journalist. He began contributing a weekly column for Lagos Daily Times. His articles were often critical of colonial government policies, the liquor trade, the water rate, taxation, racial segregation, attempts to deny indigenous land ownership, and a free press. He led protests throughout Lagos, later known as the water rate riots. Herbert was becoming a thorn in the flesh of the colonial government, and so, once again, he was thrown in jail. This second visit to the jailers lasted 6 months, and this time around, he was convicted for his involvement in the publication of a rumored plot to assassinate the exiled Eleko of Lagos. This time around, after his release from prison, Herbert became more cautious about his agitation. He took a somewhat cautious tone, but his writing, regardless, remained critical. In 1921, Herbert Macaulay went to London with the Eleko of Lagos as translator in the legal appeal for a local land tenure case. Macaulay proclaimed that the British colonial government was eroding the power and authority of the Eleko, who, he said, was recognized by all Nigerians as the rightful king of Lagos. This episode embarrassed the British and established Macaulay as a leading advocate for the rights of traditional leadership in Lagos. His success fired him up with more zeal to advocate for the helpless native royals and even commoners. He began campaigning for the rights of traditional rulers within the colonial structure. Following some grievous actions from the colonialists, Herbert alleged that the colonialists wanted to kill Eleko. Again, the Privy Council, in another groundbreaking judgment in London, ruled in favor of Macaulay. The colonial government were made to pay compensation to the Eleko. These victories further emboldened Herbert Macaulay and strengthened his political activism. In 1922, a new Nigerian constitution was introduced, which made provision for limited franchise elections just in Lagos and Calabar. By the following year, Macaulay formed his own political party, the Nigerian National Democratic Party, NNDP, the first democratic party in Nigeria. The party contested the very limited elections of African members of the Legislative Council. The NNDP's motto was Salus Populi Suprema Lex. The safety of the people is the greatest law. And at the core of its safety ideology was education. The party advocated for universal compulsory education for Nigerians. NNDP candidates won all the elective seats in the Nigerian legislature in 1923, 1928, and 1933. But then, in 1938, things will take a new turn. The party would meet its unexpected Waterloo. The NNDP's dominance was drowned when another radical party, the Nigerian Youth Movement, beat them hands down in the elections for the Lagos State Town Council. This effectively ended the dominance of Macaulay and his party. Following that defeat, Macaulay, who up until that time didn't take much interest in politics outside Lagos, adopted a more Pan-African outlook. By August 1944, he had reached an agreement with Nnamdi Azikiwe's NCNC on a merger of both parties. At this time, Macaulay was already 80 years old and failing in health. Many of Macaulay's own party members did not want to join forces with the NCC, but they threatened to resign if they didn't. They didn't have a choice but to go with the flow. Macaulay was made the president of the Mega Party in 1945, and in order to reach out to other Nigerians in the northern part of the country, he decided to tour the region. He set out on the tour the following year with Kano as his central target. Macaulay suffered an acute attack of rheumatism during his tour of Kano. He had to bring his tour to an end and return to Lagos. While he battled rheumatism, Nnamdi Azikiwe took over the party leadership and he would later become the president of Nigeria under the same party. Herbert Macaulay lost the battle to death on the 7th of May 1946 at age 82. His influence and work in activism and the reawakening of the mind of Lagosians and the entire Nigeria in his time earned him the exalted accolade of a great nationalist. Herbert Macaulay, a great African.